The morning sun cast long shadows across the concrete training ground at Fort Bragg as Sarah Martinez adjusted her helmet one final time. Around her, 43 male soldiers prepared for what their instructors called the most grueling assessment in modern military training. The Special Operations Selection Course had broken countless dreams and shattered even stronger wills. Only 12% of candidates typically survived the full program. Sarah stood 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed barely 130 pounds. Next to the towering frames of former college football players and seasoned infantry veterans, she appeared almost fragile. The other candidates had stopped trying to hide their skepticism weeks ago. Their whispered conversations carried across the barracks each night, filled with betting pools about when the diversity hire would finally wash out. The irony wasn't lost on her. These same men had no idea that Sarah Martinez had already logged more confirmed kills than most of them would see in their entire careers. They saw only what they expected to see, a small woman trying to play soldier in a man's world. The selection course had already claimed 27 casualties in the first month. Men who had dominated their previous units found themselves broken by the relentless physical and psychological pressure. The remaining candidates moved through each day like zombies, their bodies pushed beyond normal human limits. Sleep deprivation, constant hunger, and the never-ending threat of failure created an atmosphere thick with desperation. Sarah's background remained classified at levels far above the clearance of her fellow candidates. While they knew she came from some kind of special unit, the details stayed locked behind security protocols that protected America's most sensitive operations. What they couldn't know was that Sarah had spent the previous 3 years operating behind enemy lines in places that didn't officially exist on any military map. Her specialized training had begun 5 years earlier when a quiet colonel named Rebecca Stone had recruited her from an elite sniper program. Colonel Stone ran a unit so secret that even its existence was compartmentalized beyond normal special operations. The women in Stone's command operated under diplomatic cover, civilian identities, and sometimes no identity at all. They completed missions that regular special forces couldn't touch due to political sensitivities or operational requirements that demanded absolute deniability. The first hint of Sarah's true capabilities came during the 3rd week of selection when candidates faced the infamous stress shoot exercise. After 36 hours without sleep and minimal food, each soldier had to engage multiple targets while instructors screamed contradictory orders and set off explosive charges nearby. Most candidates' accuracy dropped to barely 50% under the extreme conditions. Sarah moved through the course like a machine programmed for precision. Her rifle found each target with mechanical certainty, even as smoke filled the air and the ground shook beneath her feet. When the exercise ended, the range master stared at his scoring sheet in disbelief. Perfect accuracy on all 47 targets. He ran the scores twice more before accepting the impossible result. The other candidates began paying closer attention after that performance. The mockery didn't stop entirely, but it took on a more cautious edge. Still, most attributed her shooting skills to luck or favorable conditions. Real combat, they assured each other, would be different. The little woman would crack when bullets started flying for real. Captain James Morrison, the senior candidate and unofficial leader of their group, decided to test Sarah's resolve during a particularly brutal night navigation exercise. The candidates had to move 12 miles through dense forest while carrying full combat loads and avoiding instructor ambushes. Morrison deliberately led his team into a swamp that would force everyone to wade through chest-deep water for over an hour. He expected Sarah to request assistance or fall behind when her smaller frame struggled with the additional weight of waterlogged equipment. Instead, she adapted her technique, redistributing her load, and adjusting her pace to maintain perfect formation. When Morrison's own stamina began failing in the cold water, Sarah quietly moved forward to break trail, allowing him to follow in her wake. The incident marked a subtle shift in group dynamics. Morrison stopped actively undermining her efforts, though he maintained his public skepticism. Other candidates began including her in their tactical discussions instead of treating her as an inevitable washout. Sarah responded by sharing insights that revealed deep understanding of combat tactics and operational planning. During medical training, Sarah's knowledge extended far beyond basic first aid. She demonstrated advanced trauma procedures, typically known only to combat medics and special operations personnel. When asked about her experience, she deflected with vague references to previous assignments that satisfied curiosity without revealing classified information. The psychological evaluations proved even more revealing. Military psychiatrists use sophisticated tests to identify candidates who might break under extreme stress or compromise mission security if captured. Sarah's results showed remarkable emotional stability and resistance to psychological manipulation. Her evaluators noted that she responded to stress with increased focus rather than degraded performance. One particularly telling incident occurred during a simulated prisoner of war exercise. Candidates faced hours of psychological pressure designed to break their resistance and force them to violate operational security protocols. Instructors used every technique short of actual torture to create the experience of enemy interrogation. Most candidates eventually provided information beyond the basic name, rank, and serial number permitted under military law. The psychological pressure proved too intense for even seasoned veterans to maintain perfect operational security. Sarah endured 14 hours of constant interrogation without surrendering a single piece of tactical information beyond what regulations required. The lead instructor later confided to his colleagues that Sarah's resistance exceeded that of most special operations veterans. Her ability to compartmentalize information while maintaining believable responses suggested training far beyond normal military standards. He began asking questions about her background that his superiors quickly discouraged. As the selection course entered its final month, only 16 candidates remained from the original 44. The pace intensified dramatically as instructors eliminated anyone who showed the slightest weakness. Candidates faced combinations of physical stress, sleep deprivation, and tactical problems that would challenge experienced special operations teams. Sarah continued performing at levels that defied her physical appearance. During a 40-mile forced march with full equipment, she finished among the top 3 candidates despite carrying the same load as men twice her size. Her navigation skills proved flawless across terrain that confused soldiers with years of field experience. Most impressively, her tactical decision-making improved under pressure while others began making increasingly poor choices. The other candidates gradually stopped viewing her as an oddity or potential weak link. Sarah Martinez had proven herself capable of matching or exceeding their performance across every measure category. Still, none suspected the full truth about her background or the combat experience that made their selection course seem almost routine by comparison. Captain Morrison finally approached her directly during a rare break between exercises. His initial hostility had transformed into grudging respect, but curiosity remained about how such an unlikely candidate could consistently outperform proven warriors. Sarah's response was characteristically modest and uninformative. "I've had good training," she said simply. "Same as everyone else here." Morrison knew that wasn't quite true, but pushing for details would violate the unwritten rules governing personal backgrounds during selection. Every candidate arrived with secrets and previous experiences they couldn't or wouldn't discuss. The program focused entirely on current performance rather than past achievements. What Morrison couldn't know was that Sarah's good training included 3 years of operations that most Special Forces soldiers would consider impossible missions. She had learned to operate alone behind enemy lines for months at a time, surviving on minimal resources while gathering intelligence that shaped national security policy. Her confirmed kill count exceeded that of legendary snipers from previous conflicts, but those records remained buried in files classified far beyond his access level. The final phase of selection approached rapidly as instructors prepared to eliminate all but the most exceptional candidates. Sarah Martinez had not only survived the attrition that claimed nearly three-quarters of her peers, but she had emerged as one of the strongest performers in the remaining group. Her fellow candidates had learned to respect her capabilities, even if they couldn't fully understand how she had developed such extraordinary skills. None of them realized that their toughest test still lay ahead, and Sarah Martinez was about to face a challenge that would force her to reveal just how exceptional her military service had actually been. The final exercise began before dawn on a Tuesday that would change everything for the remaining candidates. Instructors roused them from barely 2 hours of sleep with shouted commands and the crash of smoke grenades. Within minutes, 16 exhausted soldiers stumbled through darkness toward what their cadre ominously called the Crucible. Unlike previous exercises that tested specific skills, this final challenge would simulate actual combat operations under conditions designed to break even the strongest candidates. Intelligence reports described a hostage rescue mission deep in enemy territory, requiring candidates to infiltrate a fortified compound, neutralize hostile forces, and extract civilians without alerting surrounding enemy units. The twist came in the form of unexpected complications. Halfway through the mission briefing, instructors announced that enemy reinforcements would arrive in exactly 4 hours. Any candidate who failed to complete the objective within that time frame would be eliminated immediately, regardless of their previous performance throughout the selection course. Sarah listened to the briefing with the same focused attention that had carried her through every previous challenge. But something felt different about this exercise. The tactical parameters matched almost exactly a real mission she had completed 18 months earlier in a classified location. The similarities couldn't be coincidental. Her suspicions were confirmed when the exercise area was revealed. The mock enemy compound was an exact replica of a terrorist facility she had infiltrated alone while operating under diplomatic cover. Even the guard rotation schedules matched intelligence she had gathered during weeks of surveillance. Someone with access to her operational files had designed this exercise specifically around her actual combat experience. Captain Morrison took natural leadership of the assault team as candidates divided into smaller units. His military experience included multiple combat deployments with conventional infantry units, making him the obvious choice for commanding the overall operation. Morrison's tactical planning was sound, if predictable, following standard special operations procedures taught at military schools. Sarah found herself assigned to the sniper element with 3 other candidates who had demonstrated exceptional marksmanship during previous exercises. Their mission required eliminating sentries and providing overwatch while assault teams approached the compound. On paper, it seemed like a straightforward application of skills they had already proven during training. The reality proved far more complex. Enemy forces were portrayed by experienced special operations instructors who knew every tactical manual and anticipated standard responses to their defensive positions. Conventional approaches that worked in training environments failed against opponents who understood exactly what the candidates had been taught. Morrison's first assault attempt ended in simulated disaster when instructor role players detected the approaching team and triggered explosive charges that would have killed or wounded most of the assault element. The candidates regrouped, but precious time had already been lost, and enemy reinforcements were supposedly closing on their position. Sarah watched the tactical situation develop from her overwatch position and recognized the problem immediately. The candidates were approaching this like a training exercise rather than actual combat. Their movements were too predictable, their timing too precise, and their responses too methodical. Real combat required adaptation and improvisation that military schools rarely taught effectively. More importantly, Sarah knew this specific facility better than anyone else in the exercise area. She had spent 6 weeks studying every detail of the original compound before her solo infiltration mission. The guard positions, internal layout, and defensive weaknesses were burned into her memory at levels of detail that no briefing could convey. The question became whether to use that classified knowledge to ensure mission success. Revealing her familiarity with the target would expose her operational background in ways that could compromise ongoing classified programs. But watching her fellow candidates fail because they lacked information she possessed created an ethical dilemma that military training hadn't prepared her to handle. Morrison's second assault attempt showed better tactical coordination, but still failed to account for the instructor's advanced training. The role-playing enemy forces responded with sophisticated countermeasures that eliminated most of the assault element before they reached the compound perimeter. Time continued slipping away as frustrated candidates tried to understand why their textbook approaches weren't working. Sarah made her decision during a brief tactical pause. She keyed her radio and requested permission to speak directly with Morrison about alternative approaches. When the team leader agreed to hear suggestions, she began sharing insights that she carefully attributed to theoretical analysis rather than personal experience. The Western approach has concealed dead ground that surveillance can't cover effectively, she transmitted. Single infiltrator could reach the compound wall undetected and create entry points for the assault element. Morrison initially dismissed the suggestion as too risky. Sending one person alone against a fortified position violated every principle of tactical operations he had learned during his military career. But conventional approaches had already failed twice, and time was running out rapidly. Sarah pressed her case with details that surprised everyone monitoring the radio frequency. Her analysis of enemy defensive patterns was remarkably sophisticated, suggesting understanding of advanced tactical concepts that exceeded the training most special operations candidates received. She identified weaknesses in the defensive perimeter that even experienced instructors hadn't fully considered. "How do you know all this?" Morrison asked over the radio. "Good training," Sarah replied, using her standard deflection. "Sometimes you have to think like the enemy to beat them." The remaining candidates agreed to attempt Sarah's unconventional approach, partly because conventional methods had failed and partly because her tactical insights seemed genuinely promising. Morrison reorganized his forces to support a single-person infiltration while maintaining overwatch positions that could provide covering fire if needed. Sarah moved through the darkness with fluid precision that made her previous training performances look almost casual. She avoided motion detectors, circumvented patrol routes, and neutralized individual sentries without alerting the main defensive force. Her approach to the compound wall demonstrated intimate knowledge of the facility's layout that would have been impossible to gain from the mission briefing alone. The instructors portraying enemy forces found themselves responding to tactical pressures they hadn't expected from candidates at this training level. Sarah's infiltration route exploited vulnerabilities that required specialized knowledge to identify and execute. Her movements suggested combat experience far beyond what any selection course could provide. Within 30 minutes, Sarah had created multiple entry points and eliminated half the defensive force without triggering any alarms. The assault element moved into positions that would have been impossible to reach through conventional approaches. Morrison coordinated the final assault with renewed confidence, knowing that the tactical situation had shifted dramatically in their favor. The hostage rescue proceeded with remarkable efficiency once conventional tactical constraints were abandoned. Candidates adapted their techniques to match Sarah's unconventional approach, improvising solutions that their military training had discouraged in favor of standardized procedures. The exercise concluded with mission success and minimal simulated casualties among the rescue force. Instructors conducting the after-action review struggled to explain how candidates had overcome defensive measures designed to ensure mission failure. The enemy role players reported tactical approaches that exceeded expected candidate capabilities by significant margins. Several instructors requested copies of the tactical recordings for use in advanced training programs. Morrison approached Sarah immediately after the formal debrief, his expression mixing admiration with growing suspicion. Her performance during the final exercise had been extraordinary even by special operations standards. The level of tactical sophistication required to develop and execute such an infiltration plan suggested military experience that extended far beyond normal candidate backgrounds. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked directly. Sarah maintained her characteristic modest deflection, but Morrison's military experience was sufficient to recognize exceptional combat skills when he witnessed them. Her infiltration technique, target analysis, and tactical decision-making reflected training that most special operations units couldn't provide. Something about her background wasn't adding up. Other candidates gathered around as word spread about Sarah's remarkable performance. Even the most skeptical among them could no longer deny that she possessed capabilities that exceeded normal military training. Questions began arising about her previous assignments and the good training she repeatedly mentioned without elaboration. The instructors faced a more complex problem. Sarah Martinez had not only passed their selection course, but had demonstrated tactical abilities that surpassed many of their own graduates. Her final exercise performance suggested combat experience that would be valuable for special operations missions. But something about her background required investigation before final approval could be granted. The lead instructor made a decision that would change everything for Sarah and her fellow candidates. Instead of proceeding with normal graduation procedures, he activated security protocols designed to verify candidate backgrounds when exceptional performance raised questions about classified experience. Sarah Martinez was about to face scrutiny that would either validate her extraordinary capabilities or expose secrets that could end her military career. What none of the candidates knew was that their final exercise had been observed by someone with authority to reveal exactly why Sarah Martinez had performed so far above expected standards. Colonel Rebecca Stone was about to arrive at Fort Bragg with classified files that would transform everyone's understanding of what they had just witnessed. Colonel Rebecca Stone arrived at Fort Bragg exactly 72 hours after the final exercise concluded. Her unannounced appearance triggered security protocols that most base personnel had never witnessed. When a full colonel from an unidentified unit arrives with authority to review classified candidate files, even seasoned special operations instructors take notice. Sarah Martinez sat in a sterile conference room, unsure whether she was facing commendation or career-ending discipline. The past 3 days had been filled with additional interviews, background verification checks, and psychological evaluations that extended far beyond normal selection procedures. Something had clearly triggered extraordinary attention to her candidacy. Colonel Stone entered the room with a controlled presence that marked senior special operations officers. At 45, she carried herself with quiet authority earned through 2 decades of missions that existed in classified files rather than official military records. Her reputation preceded her in certain circles, though most soldiers would never know her name or understand her role in protecting national security. "Sergeant Martinez," Colonel Stone began, her voice carrying the precise diction of someone accustomed to briefing cabinet-level officials. "Your performance during selection has raised some interesting questions." Sarah maintained military bearing while her mind raced through possible explanations for this unexpected meeting. Colonel Stone's presence suggested that her classified background had somehow been exposed during the selection process. The implications could extend far beyond her own career to compromise ongoing operations. "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied carefully. "The instructors are curious about how a candidate with your official military record could demonstrate tactical capabilities that exceed most special operations veterans. They've requested clarification about your background before making final graduation decisions." Colonel Stone opened a thick file marked with security classifications that Sarah recognized as her actual service record. The official version that selection instructors had been given contained only basic biographical information and standard military training records. The classified version told a very different story. "According to your official record, Sergeant Martinez, you spent the past 5 years in various training assignments and administrative positions. Nothing particularly remarkable for someone seeking special operations qualification." Sarah remained silent, knowing that any response could compromise operational security. However, Colonel Stone continued, "Your classified record tells a more interesting story. 3 years of deep cover operations in locations that don't appear on any public maps. confirmed kills in double digits, successful completion of missions that conventional special operations teams couldn't attempt. The weight of those words hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah's extraordinary performance during selection suddenly made perfect sense to anyone with access to her real military history. But revealing that information could compromise missions that were still classified at the highest levels of government. The instructors deserve an explanation, Colonel Stone said, and your fellow candidates have earned the right to understand why they've been competing against someone with your actual qualifications. Sarah finally spoke, choosing her words with extreme care. Ma'am, my understanding was that operational histories remained classified regardless of current assignments. Normally, you would be correct, but circumstances have developed that change the normal rules. Colonel Stone produced a second file, this one containing intelligence reports that made Sarah's blood run cold. Photographs showed terrorist leaders who had been her targets during classified operations. But instead of the confirmed dead status she remembered from her mission debriefs, these enemies were apparently alive and actively planning attacks against American interests. It seems that several of your confirmed kills weren't as permanent as originally reported, Colonel Stone explained. These targets survived your operations and have since become significantly more dangerous. Your infiltration techniques and tactical methods have been studied and adapted by hostile forces who learned from surviving your attacks. The implications were staggering. Sarah's most successful operations had apparently failed at critical moments, allowing high-value targets to escape and improve their defensive capabilities. The classified missions she had considered career-defining achievements were actually intelligence failures that had made future operations more dangerous. We need someone with intimate knowledge of these targets and their current capabilities, Colonel Stone continued. Your experience makes you uniquely qualified for a mission that could neutralize threats you helped create. Sarah felt the careful foundation of her military career shifting beneath her feet. The selection course that she had nearly completed was about to become irrelevant compared to this new assignment. But the tactical knowledge she had gained during her classified operations would be essential for missions that conventional special operations forces couldn't handle. What kind of mission, ma'am? The kind that requires someone who has already proven capable of operating alone against impossible odds. The kind where failure means these targets will have months to plan attacks that could kill thousands of Americans. Colonel Stone spread additional photographs across the conference table, showing terrorist camps and weapon facilities that Sarah recognized from previous intelligence briefings. But the defensive improvements were obvious even in satellite imagery. These enemies had learned from their encounters with her and adapted accordingly. The selection course you just completed was actually an extended evaluation to determine whether your classified experience translated into capabilities that could handle this new mission. Your performance exceeded our most optimistic projections. Sarah began understanding the true scope of what had been happening during the past months. The selection course hadn't been preparation for normal special operations assignment. It had been a sophisticated test designed to evaluate her readiness for missions that would make her previous operations look simple by comparison. Your fellow candidates don't know it yet, but they've been participating in a training program designed to support this operation. The tactical skills they've developed will be essential for providing backup and extraction support that you'll need for mission success. The conference room door opened as the other candidates were escorted inside under guard. Captain Morrison and the remaining 14 soldiers looked confused and concerned about this unexpected gathering. None of them had been briefed about the classified dimensions of their selection experience. Colonel Stone addressed the group with the same precise authority she had used with Sarah. Gentlemen, you've just completed one of the most sophisticated training programs in military history. What you believed to be candidate selection was actually preparation for a classified operation that requires exceptional capabilities. The candidates exchanged glances filled with confusion and growing apprehension. Nothing about this development matched their expectations for normal special operations assignments. Sergeant Martinez has been operating under classified cover throughout your training. Her actual military record includes 3 years of deep penetration operations against targets that now require immediate neutralization. You've been training to support missions that conventional special forces cannot attempt. Morrison stepped forward with the confidence that had made him the unofficial leader throughout their selection experience. Ma'am, what exactly are you saying about Martinez? Colonel Stone smiled with the expression of someone about to reveal a carefully guarded secret. I'm saying that Sergeant Martinez has more confirmed combat kills than most entire special operations teams accumulate during full deployment cycles. I'm saying that her tactical capabilities exceed those of officers with decades of special operations experience. And I'm saying that you've all been selected to support her on missions that will determine whether certain terrorist leaders live to plan attacks against American civilians. The silence that followed Colonel Stone's revelation was profound. 15 hardened soldiers stared at Sarah Martinez with expressions ranging from amazement to disbelief. The small woman they had initially dismissed as a diversity hire was apparently one of the most lethal operatives in American military service. Morrison found his voice first, though it carried a tone of stunned respect rather than his previous skepticism. How many kills? Colonel Stone looked directly at Sarah before responding. That information remains classified, but I can tell you that Sergeant Martinez has successfully eliminated targets that other special operations units considered impossible to reach. Sarah felt the weight of her fellow candidates' attention with uncomfortable intensity. The carefully maintained cover that had protected her throughout the selection course was dissolving rapidly, revealing capabilities that would fundamentally change how everyone viewed her military service. The mission I'm about to describe requires perfect coordination between someone with Martinez's unique experience and a support team capable of operating under conditions that will challenge everything you've learned during selection, Colonel Stone continued. Failure is not an option, because the consequences extend far beyond military objectives. The candidates listened with growing understanding as Colonel Stone outlined operations that would take them into hostile territory where conventional rules of engagement didn't apply. Sarah Martinez wasn't just their fellow candidate anymore. She was about to become their mission leader for operations that would test every skill they had developed during the most grueling training experience of their military careers. The classified briefing room fell silent as Colonel Stone prepared to reveal the full extent of Sarah Martinez's combat record. The candidates who had spent months questioning her qualifications were about to learn exactly why their skepticism had been so misplaced. What they were about to hear would change their understanding of modern warfare and their respect for the woman they had underestimated. Before we discuss your upcoming mission, Colonel Stone began, I believe you deserve to understand exactly who you've been training alongside. Sergeant Martinez's classified record includes operations that most Special Forces soldiers would consider fictional if they appeared in movies. She activated a secure presentation system that displayed a world map marked with red indicators across multiple continents. Each marker represented a confirmed kill attributed to Sarah's operations over the previous 3 years. The geographic spread was remarkable, spanning from Eastern Europe to Southeast Asia to Central America. Operation Ghost Valley, 18 months ago, Colonel Stone narrated as she highlighted specific locations. Sergeant Martinez spent 6 weeks infiltrating a terrorist training camp in an undisclosed mountain region. Her mission was intelligence gathering. When she discovered plans for coordinated attacks on American embassies, she made tactical decisions that saved thousands of lives. Captain Morrison and his fellow candidates stared at the display in growing amazement. The scope of operations described by Colonel Stone exceeded anything they had encountered during their military careers. Sarah Martinez had been operating at levels of independence and responsibility that most soldiers never approached. Single-handed neutralization of 43 hostile combatants across multiple compounds, Colonel Stone continued. Perfect mission completion without backup support or extraction assistance. She walked out of that mountain range after eliminating an entire terrorist leadership structure. The number hit the room like a physical blow. 43 confirmed kills during a single operation was extraordinary by any military standard. Most soldiers never achieve that number across entire careers. Yet Sarah had accomplished it during one classified mission while operating completely alone. Operation Silent Thunder, 14 months ago, Colonel Stone moved to the next red marker on her map. Deep penetration of a weapons trafficking network that was supplying advanced explosives to terrorist cells throughout Europe. Sergeant Martinez assumed diplomatic cover and spent 4 months building relationships that provided access to the network's command structure. Sarah remained motionless as Colonel Stone described missions that she remembered with painful clarity. The diplomatic cover had required her to maintain civilian identity while gathering intelligence that conventional assets couldn't obtain. The psychological pressure of extended undercover operations was something that no training could fully prepare soldiers to handle. 27 confirmed kills across 6 European capitals, Colonel Stone continued. Each elimination was conducted without alerting other network members or compromising ongoing intelligence operations. The weapons trafficking network collapsed completely without understanding what had destroyed their organization. The candidates began recognizing the tactical sophistication required for such operations. Eliminating targets across multiple countries while maintaining operational security exceeded the capabilities of most special operations teams. Sarah had accomplished it alone while maintaining civilian cover that prevented any connection to American military operations. Operation Desert Wind, 8 months ago, Colonel Stone highlighted markers across 3 Middle Eastern countries. Terrorist leadership had developed chemical weapons capabilities that posed immediate threats to regional stability. Conventional military action would have triggered international incidents that diplomatic efforts couldn't resolve. Morrison found himself studying Sarah with new eyes as Colonel Stone described increasingly impossible missions. The woman he had initially dismissed as physically inadequate for special operations had apparently completed assignments that would challenge entire special forces units working in coordination. 38 confirmed kills, including the complete elimination of chemical weapons research teams, Colonel Stone revealed. Sergeant Martinez infiltrated facilities that were considered impenetrable and neutralized threats that could have killed millions of civilians. She accomplished this while maintaining diplomatic cover that prevented any international complications. The mathematical reality was becoming clear to everyone in the room. Sarah Martinez had accumulated over 100 confirmed kills across operations that spanned 3 years and multiple continents. Her tactical success rate was perfect, and her operational security had never been compromised despite working alone in the most dangerous regions of the world. The selection course you just completed was designed to test whether Sergeant Martinez could transition from solo operations to team leadership, Colonel Stone explained. Her performance confirmed that she can coordinate with other operators while maintaining the exceptional standards that made her previous mission successful. Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying a mixture of pride and weariness that reflected the psychological toll of her classified service. Ma'am, the candidates deserve to know that those operations required capabilities that exceed normal military training. What we accomplished during selection is possible because of lessons learned during missions that most soldiers never face. Colonel Stone nodded with approval at Sarah's response. Which brings us to your current mission requirements. The targets that Sergeant Martinez previously eliminated have been replaced by individuals who learn from those encounters. Current intelligence indicates they have developed countermeasures specifically designed to defeat her previous tactical approaches. The implications were sobering. Sarah's extraordinary success rate had actually created more sophisticated enemies who understood her capabilities and had adapted accordingly. Future operations would require new approaches that built upon her experience while accounting for improved enemy defensive measures. Your mission will take you into territory where these adapted enemies believe they are safe from the tactics that previously destroyed their organizations, Colonel Stone continued. They have invested significant resources in defensive measures designed specifically to counter Sergeant Martinez's known operational methods. Morrison stepped forward with the respect that had replaced his previous skepticism. Ma'am, what specific role will each of us play in supporting Martinez during this operation? You will provide the tactical flexibility that solo operations cannot achieve, Colonel Stone replied. Sergeant Martinez's previous success was based on predictability. Enemies who understood conventional special operations tactics, but had never encountered her specific capabilities. Current targets have studied her methods and prepared countermeasures that require tactical adaptation. The briefing continued for 3 more hours as Colonel Stone outlined mission parameters that would test every skill the candidates had developed during their selection experience. Sarah would lead operations that required perfect coordination between her specialized experience and the conventional special operations capabilities that her team members provided. The target list included terrorist leaders who had survived previous encounters with Sarah by learning from their organization's destruction. They had established new defensive measures, recruited personnel trained to counter her specific tactics, and developed operational security that accounted for her infiltration capabilities. Success requires combining Sergeant Martinez's unique experience with conventional special operations support that can adapt when enemies respond to her presence, Colonel Stone concluded. Each of you brings capabilities that will be essential when predetermined tactical plans encounter unexpected resistance. The candidates accepted their new reality with the professionalism that had carried them through selection. Sarah Martinez was no longer their peer competing for the same opportunities. She was their mission leader with combat experience that exceeded their combined military service. The woman they had questioned was about to lead them on operations that would test everything they thought they knew about modern warfare. As the briefing concluded, Morrison approached Sarah with expressions of respect and curiosity. Martinez, how do you handle the pressure of operating alone against those kinds of odds? Sarah considered the question carefully before responding. You learn to trust your training and accept that mission success matters more than personal survival. But having backup support will make these upcoming operations feel almost easy by comparison. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. Sarah Martinez had spent 3 years proving that conventional wisdom about combat limitations was wrong. Now she would lead a team that included soldiers who had initially believed she lacked the capability to survive special operations training. Their upcoming missions would demonstrate that underestimating anyone in military service was a mistake that could prove fatal for enemies and allies alike. Colonel Stone's revelation had transformed 15 skeptical candidates into believers who understood that exceptional military service comes in forms that training manuals rarely describe. Sarah Martinez had earned their respect through performance that spoke louder than physical appearances or traditional expectations about combat roles. The mission ahead would test whether that respect could translate into tactical success against enemies who had learned to fear the name Sarah Martinez and had spent months preparing to ensure they never underestimated her capabilities again.